students. I'm Dr. Raj Prakash from Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. Today we are going to see a completely new topic, cleft lip and palate. Though the incidence of cleft lip and palate may be very less in Indian population, it's also an important criteria for us to know what is the cleft, how to treat a cleft. Being basically dentist, what are all the importance of a dentist playing an important role in the management of cleft lip and palate. Okay, we will directly go to that part. So we'll be talking about something about an introduction, terminologies, why we should treat cleft, the incidence of cleft, etiology, its embryology, of the basic formation of normal anatomy. That's it. Theories of cleft, classification, problems associated with cleft, then the general protocol. Then we'll be talking about the surgical management and what is VPI. VPI is nothing but velopharyngeal incompetency. Okay. Telling about introduction about it is what is basically a cleft. A cleft is nothing but a crack or a fissure or a split that occurs in the maxillofacial region. Okay, it can be anywhere in the body. Most commonly, we'll be talking about in terms of maxillofacial region. So, it's nothing but a crack, fissure, or a split. So, other thing is what is congenital abnormalities or congenital deformities. Abnormalities in the appearance or function that occur due to unusual occurrence in the embryological developmental sequence during the intrauterine period. So that's about congenital deformities. Deformities can occur anywhere, at the neck region, in the thorax, abdomen, leg, anywhere. Orofacial clefts are nothing but orofacial clefts are congenital deformities which manifest at birth. Any disturbance during the embryological formation and development and growth of orofacial region will result in formation of orofacial clefts. Orofacial clefts are most commonly and frequently occurring craniofacial birth defect. So you have to understand this. So orofacial cleft is one of the most common craniofacial birth defect. Okay. Some terminologies. You should be knowing what is the submucosal cleft. Cleft or discontinuity that is present only in the palatal musculature without any breach in the mucous membrane. As you can see in the first image to my left. So there is, you can see there is a mucus. There is no breach in any mucous membrane, but underlying you can see a defect which is supposed to be a muscular defect or a body defect. So it's a submucosa cleft. The velopharyngeal incompetency, a condition in which the velopharyngeal closure required for illegible speech that is produced by posterior and superior movement of soft palate is affected. That's what it is. The muscles of the soft palate, which is present in the posterior region and superior region, any disorientation or loss of muscular compartment will lead to insufficiency, speech insufficiency. That is what it is. Velopharyngeal incompetency is nothing but speech insufficiency. Okay. So palatal fistula, a breach in continuity of the palate that results in an abnormal communication between the nasal cavity and the oral cavity. As you can see to the right extreme, there is a communication between from above the nasal cavity and posteriorly behind the oral region. Okay. So alveolar cleft, an abnormal breach in the continuity of the alveolar bone of the maxilla, occurring most commonly in the region between the lateral incisor and canine, that may manifest as a simple notching of the alveolus to a complete discontinuity, resulting in a fistulous tract between the nasal floor and the mouth. So you have to really know what is a alveolar cleft. Alveolar cleft completely present within the maxilla or the mandible. In this situation is definitely going to be maxilla. An abnormal breach in the continuity of the alveolar bone, say from central incisor to the molar, last molar. If there is any abnormal discontinuity in the alveolar segment, as you can see in the right top corner of that image, you can see between your central incisor and the canine there is a breach. So there is a missing a lateral incisor there. So there is a defect going from the occlusal surface reaching the nasal cavity. So that is about alveolar cleft. Premaxilla, anterior to the incisive foramen exceeding the palate. Okay, premaxilla is nothing but that part of the maxilla which is present anterior to the incisive foramen. So the teeth present at that region is your centrals, laterals, and to a certain extent your canine. Okay, so premaxilla is nothing but anterior to incisive foramen excluding the palate. In this instance, you are supposed to include your prolabium. Prolabium is nothing but your lip part and the frenal part. So that is what it is. So premaxilla is the entire thing excluding the palate. Okay. So primary palate is nothing but anterior to the incisive foramen with the palate, whereas premaxilla is excluding the palate. So secondary palate is nothing but posterior to the incisive foramen, where you have your bilateral palatal shelf, you have your hard palate, your soft palate, all these things. Okay. So your primary palate, secondary palate together constitute your maxillary process. So why to treat clefts? See, in general, you will have to have a basic ideology. So why we should treat clefts? So there will be, if you treat a patient, definitely at the younger age, his survival rate will increase. So basically, these childs will have problem in their basic feeding. So there is anything which we can do to increase their feeding, definitely their survival rate will increase. Improve overall masticatory and other associated functions, improve or normalize facial aesthetics. See, early birth, if you correct it, there will not be any mid-face deficiency. So once you correct the cleft part, so maxilla starts to grow normally. So there will not be any facial compromise in facial aesthetics. Better social acceptance and social integration. Okay, normal psychological development will be there. Okay, most of the cleft patients, if you see them, if there is a loss in the mid face and they are not able to speak, they are not able to go to talk properly, they will not be that much socializable person, so they will be affected psychologically. So that is one important thing. Then to improve the airway patency and achieve integrity of the primary and secondary palate, to improve speech and hearing. Okay, you have another thing is like cleft patients will be always syndromic. They will be having associated syndrome. Like cleft patients will also have a missing tooth, Down syndrome patients. Some more symptoms are there. The symptoms are there. Okay. Folge. And coming to the etiological part, so it's a genetic disorder. Over 100 genetic syndromes are associated with this. So it has a chromosomal aberration also because of some loss in the DNA or RNA structure. There will be loss of chromosomal integrity. So that may be a reason also. So teratogenicity induced disorders like environmental type, any medications type interfere and interrupt normal development of the fetal process. So teratogenicity is also an important etiology. Mechanical, that is induced to trauma, physical obstruction, rupture of the amniotic cavity, intrauterine crowding, intrauterine tumors, irregularly shaped uterus. All these things can be counted as etiology for this cleft lip and palate. So this is how generally a cleft looks like from the palatal occlusal aspect. So the first one to the left extreme shows you there is a cleft only in the soft palate, that is the uvula. It is alone avowed where there is only a small minute cleft. The second one is in the incomplete submucosal soft palate cleft. Okay, it's not touching the hard palate or the mucosa over the hard palate. It's exclusively involving the uvula and the muscles of the soft palate. Then the third one is the complete unilateral cleft palate, and the last is the bilateral cleft. You can see at the center. I guess most of you people must be knowing what it is. It is nothing but the base of the nasal cavity or nasal septum, which is nothing which extends superiorly as the omer. So coming to the embryology. So at the end of the fourth week, this is how your fetus look like. Okay. So you can see to the right extreme photo that we have that stomodium, which is nothing but the future oral cavity. Your reddish one is your maxillary prominence. Below that is your mandibular prominence. Above your reddish purports is your frontonasal prominence. Lateral is your nasal purports. Okay, so this is the fourth week of intrauterine life. So as it develops at the end of sixth or seventh week, this is how it look like. So there is your frontal nasal prominence, your eye placode and nasal plates. Then you have your maxillary prominence, which is getting more prominent. Then the stomodium, future oral cavity, is taking shape. Okay, you have your nasolacrimal groove also forming. So a normal lip palate formation is, so for to form you need your median nasal process plus your frontal nasal process. Both of this together forms your premaxilla, your philtrum, columella, nares, lips, nasal septum, anterior part of your nasal septum. So I will repeat it again: median nasal process plus frontal nasal process. This together forms your premaxilla, philtrum, your columella, nares, lips, nasal septum. So lateral, what does lateral nasal process form? The lateral nasal process. So your lateral nasal prominence gives rise to your ale of the nose. Okay. So bilateral maxillary process. What is your bilateral maxillary process? That reddish color prominence gives rise to. It gives rise to your cheek, zygoma, maxilla, and secondary palate. Kindly note an important thing. It gives rise to your secondary palate. Okay. And next, so how does a cleft occur? So failure in fusion between median nasal process and maxillary process at the 4th to 6th week results in cleft lip. Failure in fusion between two maxillary process at the 8th or 12th week results in cleft palate. So this is what is very important for us. So failure in fusion between medial nasal process and maxillary process at the 4th or 6th week results in cleft lip, whereas failure in fusion between two maxillary process at the 8th or 12th week results in cleft palate. Okay. So regarding theories of cyst pathogenesis, so there were numerous theories which was given. So apart from them, we have some selective three, four theories. So his theory, William His in 1974 gave this theory, that is presence of many cavities like nasal cavities, your nasal placode, your stomodium in and around the face is present already. So because of these cavities, which with along associated with some other physical or mechanical trauma, gives rise to the continuation of the cavity into the cleft part. So that is about his theory. So array hypothesis, again in 1947, what he gives is failure of fusion of median nasal and maxillary process. Okay, so this is what is already being discussed, array hypothesis based on his theory. Okay, then Stark theory, failure of mesodermal reinforcement on branchial membranes. So you know that mesodermal layer gives an initiation in certain areas for formation of ectoderm and endoderm. So if there is lack in failure of initiation in mesoderm at the branchial membrane levels, so that also leads to cleft. That was given by Stark. So neuromeric theory. So Michael Christen tells that failure in neuroanatomical map of during embryogenesis, that is lack in signaling molecules and transcription factors. So that is about Michael Christen's neuromeric theory. So now coming to the basic classification. So how do you classify cleft lip and palate patients. So there are numerous classifications given for this. So we'll stick to the basic. So the basic classification is based upon the location, like whether it is present in the lip, alveolus, palate. So completeness, whether it is a complete lip, it's an incomplete lip, or it's a microform. Then comes the extent, unilateral or bilateral. This is the basic classification. Then comes the spectrum based. In spectrum based, first and foremost we will take into lip part. So there are based upon that we have your microform lip, your unilateral incomplete and complete, bilateral incomplete and complete. So whereas palate is concerned, you have your primary palate, your secondary palate, isolated cleft palate. Then coming to soft palate, you have your submucosal cleft and your bifid uvula. So this is the main classification. First classification given by Davis and Richard in 1922 based on anatomical basis. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. So Group 1 is nothing but pre-alveolar clefts, unilateral, bilateral and median. Group 2 is nothing but your post-alveolar cleft. Group 3 is a combination of above. Okay. So then Wu in 1931 presented a very simple form of classification. Again he gave a 4 categories, that is cleft of soft palate alone, that is group 1. Group 2, cleft of hard and soft palate, palatal alveolar clefts. This is about the group 2, that is cleft of hard and soft palate, palatal alveolus. Group 3, complete unilateral cleft extending from uvula to incisive foramen and then derivates to one side extending through the alveolus. This is group 3, complete unilateral cleft extending from uvula to the incisive foramen. It's a complete long cleft. Okay. Group 4 is complete bilateral alveolar cleft. So this international classification in 1967 given by Kernahan and Stark. This is a very important classification. Okay, this is an important 5-mark question also. Simply if it is in your, as far as your exam point of view is concerned, they will ask define cleft, write the classification, write about Kernahan's stripped Y classification and its management. So Kernahan is a very important classification. Why it is being told as stripped Y is gives in the formation of a word. So the diagrams are all self-explanatory. I will tell you. So at the bottom, if you see for lip, what he has given is 1 and 4. So first you have to know what is what. So what is the numerical value given to the anatomical structure? You have to first know that. So first 1 and 4 is your lip. So take the left top first image. So for an example, I am telling that you leave about the coloration and all, dark color, light color. First let me tell you about the normal anatomy. Normal values and with the anatomical relation. So 1 and 4 are extremes representing your lips, top extremes. 2 and 5 represents your alveolus. 3 and 6, that is 3 and 6 represents the palate anterior to the incisive foramen. 7, 8, 9 represents your palate posterior to your incisive foramen. That is nothing but your hard palate. So at the center of the Y at the bottom, just above the 7, you can see a round there. That is supposed to be your incisive foramen. So anterior to it, posterior to it, they have given. So 1 and 4 according to Kernahan and Stark stripped Y classification, 1 and 4 represents your lip, 2 and 5 represents your alveolus, 3 and 6 represents palate anterior to the incisive foramen. 7, 8, 9 represents the hard palate or palate posterior to your incisive foramen. So a diagrammatic representation for cleft of right lip. Okay, 4. You can see in the first image it's 4. So for that, you see the adjacent image, corresponding image. So on the right side on the lip there is a deformity. So similarly on the right and left, second image, if we come to second Y, you can see that 4, 5, 6 is dark in color. So similarly it is occurring in the lip extending to the palate and also the anterior palate. So that is type, another type. Then coming to the third image, you can see 7, 8, 9. That is cleft of the hard palate posterior to the anterior palate. Okay. So another thing is it is also not involving the incisive foramen. Whereas for your fourth image, the left bottom corner, you can see 7, 8, 9 again it's dark, and some amount of incisive foramen is also dark. So that is your cleft occurring from soft palate anteriorly extending into the hard palate, but not crossing the anterior palate. So coming to the fifth image, see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is dark. So this is a complete unilateral cleft. So if everything right from 1 to 9 is color, then it's a complete bilateral cleft. One important thing you will have to take into consideration here is the lip, the palate, hard and soft palatebula is extended. Whereas what in case if the nose or the nasal base is involved? So where is the classification for that? Okay, this is just another representation for the same Carnahan stooped Y. You can see the left side. So the left side is involved, the left side is colored. You can see there is a soft palate involvement in the second image. So hard and soft palate alone is image. So unilateral and bilateral. So Millard modified Carnahan's classification and added 1 and 5. I will tell you what it is. So what it is 1 and 5 is nothing but inclusion of a basal nasal cavity. Okay, how do you go for the classification? Millard's modification of Carnahan's classification, Carnahan and Stark's classification is again the numbering system. So starting from your left top corner 1, 2, 3, 4, then it comes to the center, and again to the other side goes. You starts with the 5, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then come to hard palate and soft palate. It's 9, 10, 11. So previously we used to start posterior to incisive foramen in Carnahan's classification from 7, 8 and 9. Here it is different. Okay, so that's what. So in this scenario, he has also included a hourglass on top of the Carnahan's classification. You can see that right there is an X, right? So in that X also on each side has two parts. The lower one represents the nasal floor, whereas the upper one represents the nose. So 1 and 5 represents your nasal floor, 2 and 6 represents your lip, 3 and 7 represents your alveolus, 4 and 8 represents your hard palate or alveolus or anterior maxilla in front of the incisive foramen. Whereas 9, 10, 11, that is 9 and 10 involves hard palate posterior to the incisive foramen. 11 and 12 involves your soft palate. So similarly, right and left. If you put a center line extending from the incisive foramen, that is from 9 to bottom, so again it can be used as two sides, right and left. Okay, so that's one thing. So Ashley's modification is that he split 9, 10, 11 for right and left side and added 12 for pharynx cleft. So that is another. So a small modifications only. So the basic thing is Carnahan and Stark's classification, stooped Y classification for cleft lip and palate. Then Millard's modification of Carnahan's classification. Then Ashley's modification. Ashley's modification is nothing, as I told you, from 9, 10 and 11 at the center from the incisive foramen he just drew a line and split it into right and left side. Okay, so and also he is the one who has included number 12, that is pharynx cleft. Okay, that's about the basic classification. So now coming to the, so whatever cleft so far I have told is cleft of craniofacial region, and that too related to maxilla, mandible and nose. So what is the other classification that you know? That is Stesius classification. It's nothing but orofacial classification or orofacial clefts. Okay, this numbering starts from 0 to 14. It's a big classification. Okay, from 0 starting the midline and 14 ending in the midline. So you can see that image in comparison. You can see 1 and 13 together, 2 and 12 together, 3 and 11 together, 4 and 10 together, 5 and 9 together, So and as it goes, it extends from the lip, maybe even from the chin, and it goes via the nose and eye and to the frontal region. Lateral clefts are also present at the eye ocular level and also at the um, ear level. So this is nothing but Tessius classification of orofacial cleft. So what are all the problems? Now coming to the problems. What are all the basic problems associated in the associated with the cleft patients? So basic thing is the feeding problem. So they'll have difficulty in feeding, so they have to be kept in a proper position as a child. They have to be kept in a proper position for feeding. So associated systemic anomalies, some mental retardation problems will be there. Speech again, there will be a difficulty in speech. Ear infection, they will have repeated ear infection, malocclusion, and maxillary growth. Supposed to take care at the 16th week intrauterine, prenatal, neonatal, immediately after birth 1 week, 0 to 3 months, then 12 to 6 months. Then the next series is 3 months after palatal repair, team evaluation for speech and language assessment. 3 to 6 years, team evaluation on medical behavior interventions if needed is to be given, speech therapy, treatment of middle ear infection, any fistulas present, soft palate lengthening, psychological evaluation. All these things are very important. So people should have wondered when you yawn, right? Your earbuds open. When when you are in an extreme cold climate, when you yawn, no, your earbuds open. You have that tick sound. That is because of there is a communication between the ear cavity and the oral cavity. So on extreme yawning, you will have a blast of your ears opening. So that is to maintain the balance. Okay. Then at 5th to 7th year, lip nose revision if necessary, secondary rhinoplasty, pharyngeal surgeries if needed, all can be done. So in this thing you'll have to know an important rule, that's nothing but Miller's rule of 10. It's a very important rule. Rule of 10, what does that say? So at the 10th week of age, when the baby is 10 lbs weight and when the hemoglobin levels is 10 grams, then we go for a surgery. Let it be even a cleft lip or a palate surgery. Excuse me. So that is about Miller's golden rule of 10. It's again very important MCQs or what is a important short note also. So Miller's rule in cleft management is important rules. So we have a general protocol and this Miller's rule. So it's 10th week of age when the baby is 10 lbs weight and 10 grams of hemoglobin. Important. Then now coming to the surgical management. So this is very important part. How do you surgically manage it? So there are two ways of management. One is primary and another secondary. Primary management, pre-surgical nasoalveolar molding, feeding plate, primary cleft lip and nose repair, primary palate repair, pharyngoplasty. This comes under primary management. Secondary management, secondary alveolar bone grafting, orthodontic treatment, cleft orthognathics, rhinoplasty or scar revision. The secondary treatment is always done after a while. It's not done on an emergency. Primary treatment is what we'll have to concentrate. The secondary treatment, already in this you know what is orthognathics. So something related to cleft will be done. Some AMOs to bring the maxilla anterior, you must be knowing already cleft orthognathic class has been taken. So rhinoplasty you know, then orthodontics, some grafting cases. So talking about the primary treatment. So nasoalveolar molding. Okay, it's very important. See, you can see in that image in the right top corner, you can see a small prominence. That is nothing but your premaxilla. It's a bilateral cleft. In bilateral cleft only people will be having a floating premaxilla. If you go and just touch that center point, it will be floating. It will be so prominent or so tender. When you press it, it will go inside. So that much fragile it is. So you don't have to do a surgery for that. You just mold it. How do you mold? How do you do molding? border molding. The same way you do just a molding of it. How do you do a molding? So that is also, it's not just a non-surgical procedure. It's also a surgical procedure. You do it under a operative environment. So you press on the lip and slowly manipulate it so that when the when you give digital pressure, slowly it goes in. So once you have done a sitting of nasal brooding, you are supposed to uh, soothe the patient with the feeding plate. You can see in that blue image and that pink denture, there is nothing but your feeding plate. It's mainly given to stop entering of milk into the nasal cavity. So all these images are feeding plates. It is mainly done in case of free floating premaxilla. It's a minimally non-surgical management method. Okay, so it can be done only under a minor OT setup. So also can serve as a feeding plate. Yes. So what are all the other methods? So unilateral, in case of unilateral cleft lip, so you have two surgical method that is given, that is basically triangular flap method. In 1952 it was given. The first thing is Tennyson lip repair, similar to the end of Randall and Malky. So Tennyson lip repair. Okay, the first thing you can see on the right side of that image, you can see it's a unilateral cap running into the involving the lip and entering into the nasal cavity. So incisions are placed along the mucosal level and flap is elevated. The important drawback of treating a lip patient is that recurrence, because there is less amount of abundant tissue, because the soft tissue is very fragile, you cannot tend to tear it or allow to shrink it. Once you do a suturing, it will tend to lose its elasticity. Once it loses its elasticity, it tends to tear. So recurrence is a very important drawback in case of treating cleft lip and palate patients. And also you know that as far as lip is concerned, your oris muscle is a very tight muscle. That's what gives you the smile. So the orientation of this muscle is so thick and it is so big muscle that when the after the cleft surgery, when the patient smile, chances are there to tear up. So that much extensive muscle power is present for this orbicularis oris. So you should be very careful in taking that into consideration. So you should not, it's not like just like piling up tissues and giving a suture. No, you're supposed to orient it. You have to first know the normal anatomy for you to operate on cleft anatomy. So you orient the basal intraoral tissues, intraoral tissue with the intraoral tissue, in between muscle layer with the muscle layer and nasal layer with nasal, and superior outermost labial layer with labial lips. Okay, so that is a diagrammatic representation of your Tennyson method of triangular flap. Then Rowe and Thompson, the same way. It's also given as a straight line closure. It extends into the blue line, that is nothing but you have your columella, so it never extends beyond past your columella. Okay. So next important unilateral cleft lip repair method is Muller's rotational advancement flap. So as you can see, there is some normal anatomical values, I mean numerical and alphabetical values present. So each has its own importance. So in this aspect, when you take into consideration 1, 2, 3, the same way on the other side also 1, 2, 3 is small, but with a dash on top. That represents nothing but 1, 2, 3 is of a normal side and one dash comes for 1, 2, 3 is on the cleft side. So to my left, you see center point of the columella is taken into consideration 1. Then its lateral summit at the top, it's called as 2 and 3, and the floor of the nose extension is called as 4. The same side we are trying to mark the same anatomical landmarks on the cleft side, but with a dash on top. So here you can see 3 and 4 dash. Okay, so the 3 dash on the other side should join with the 3 on the normal side. That is the basic thing. So that's why initial markings are very important. The 4 dash on the cleft side should join with the 4 on the normal side. So C, the similar way the she should join with the she dash. So these are the important thing. And orientation of the tissues. All normal soft tissues which are which is present underneath, that is below the nasal cavity or into the oral cavity, the tissue has to be exploited, it has to be elevated. Then the muscular layer should be oriented and should be inserted, and the superficial dermal layer to be sutured. So this is again a mild form cleft where you form that. So different people have their own concept of marking. Some will have alphabet, some will have numeric, some will have combination of both. So the second image represents, so that's what various people have their own ways of doing the markings. You can see this diagrammatic representation of closure of your cleft lip layer by layer. The lower bottom image, you can see that there is some amount of undermining work is being done, then it's being switched. So generally about Millard's advancement rotation of flap on the Dusseldorf's good Dusseldorf. It's a good technique. It has excellent results. It has high flexibility. As I told you, tension will be very minimal in this technique, so that flexity will be more. Tight lips on the upper part will be present, whereas when compared to the lower part, that is one minor disadvantage. Difficulty to get optimal rotation is there. On wrong turn due to muscular activity, recurrence may be seen. So that's why there is always a secondary stage of management for cleft lip and palate patient. Okay, so another important technique is Dillaire's technique of muscular reconstruction. It's mainly based on muscular reconstruction. So the previous techniques used muscle reconstruction as one of the secondary objectives. Here Dillaire is the main objective, where so basically the muscles are oriented. So it is basically a good technique due to muscular orientation. It has a good functional repair. Muscles are being oriented, so there is vocal stimulation is good, that is speech response is good, so recurrence is reduced, and it is technique sensitive. But the important thing is orientation of a long oblique or longitudinal orientation of the muscles to be in the radicular fashion. That is important. So some of the other techniques for unilateral cleft lip is Rose technique, Chait technique, Pephius technique, Nakashima technique. Then you have your Dillaire technique, that which we have already taught. So another modification is there now given by Nordhoff. It's nothing but Millard's advanced rotational flap modification. So since Dillaire's technique had its advantage over Millard's technique, so Nordhoff made a small modification over Millard, in which the nasal base was taken into consideration, and he added a modification. Inverse nasal repair along with lip repair. Uses inferior turbinate to reconstruct upper part of the cleft. So this is more persistent, and this technique had a good reach among surgeons, and it had its popularity also. So when you come to the cleft lip correction, definitely nasal pod is also involved. So you can see there is obliteration of the cavities of the nose. So to preform your nose, certain techniques were given, that is Macomb, Thompson and Bardach. You don't have to know about the details of this because it comes under rhinoplasty, and the rhinoplasty unfortunately is not in your category. So it's basically, you know that nasal repair is also associated with cleft lip repair. Coming to the bilateral techniques, bilateral cleft lip and cleft lip repairs. So it's one thing is straight line closure for Woos 3 operation. Also we have Woos classification, Woos 3 operation. Okay, that is one. You can see the images in case of a orientation of your alphabeticals A, B, and C. So A on the normal side, B on the cleft side. So they are being oriented and closure is given. So whose operation. So again Millard comes here. Millard's repair of complete and incomplete bilateral clefts. Black's technique. Okay. So that's about Millard's repair. We'll talk about that. And the other technique is Black's technique, Stokes technique, Manchester method, Braski. That is nothing but used to primary Abbey Eslander or Abbey flap. Okay, nothing but T. Then comes your one Langenbach, part cleaner, pushback, all the things. Okay, so the secondary thing is our gingiva that's nothing but clefts of the alveolus. Preserving after incising or incising gingiva and elevating a periosteum there. So bone grafts can be given. Secondary, that's what secondary alveolar bone grafting, distant and local regional bone grafts. So most commonly local regional bone grafts taken from mandibular symphysis region. Distant region is taken from the iliac bone. So then distraction or osteogenesis, alveolar distraction will be done segmental or complete. Then comes orthodontic treatment and orthodontic. Left orthodontic is a separate entity. So basically I have already told you regarding this anterior maxillary osteotomy as a rotation. So this is about VPI, velopharyngeal incompetency, as I have already told you. It's a term where it is used when a patient is diagnosed as being unable to raise the velum to meet the posterior pharyngeal wall to see the nasal airway during speech. That's the technical explanation for your velopharyngeal insufficiency. So what is that? When basically patient speaks, the air has to gush in and out through only the oral cavity. Once some amount of air passes through and comes out through the nasal cavity, the effectiveness of the word is lost. Okay, so that's why cleft patients are not able to give you some alphabets like W, N, S, all of this. So cleft is being a primary reason for VPA. So what is that? How do you treat it? So to treat VPA, you have to touch the pharynx. So what are the procedures? So it's generally a pharyngoplasty. So pharyngoplasty for VPA, it has two procedures, that is posterior flap pharyngoplasty or lateral sphincter pharyngoplasty. So your black and white image represents your sphincter pharyngoplasty, as you can see on the lateral aspect near your adenoids, on the lateral margin the clefts, additional tissues are being incised and oriented horizontally and suture is placed. So this way the air escaping through, gushing through the nasal cavity is being blocked, so that entire air comes out of the oral cavity, so that patient's speech will be proper. And the other thing is posterior flap pharyngoplasty is nothing but a incision made along the posterior wall of the pharynx, and some amount of tissue is being taken from in and it is being closed with the soft palate region, so that again bridge is being connected so that the air doesn't gush out through the nasal cavity and it completely blocks nasal way of gushing air and it reorients the flow through the oral cavity. Okay, so that's about basically your cleft lip and palate management. So the important things which you will have to concentrate is about the embryological part. So because of what cleft occurs, that is very very important. So what is the medial nasal process, what is the maxillary process, what is the lateral nasal process too, all these things are very important. Then coming to the incidence and etiology. Incidence, as I have already told you, left side is more common than right side, male are more common affected by females, cleft lip is more common in males, whereas cleft palate is more common in females. All these things you have to know about it. Then basic classification of your cleft lip and palate, whose classification, Carnahan's strip very important. Then there are modifications, and the other thing is regarding general medicine. So you have to have you have to know the protocol. How do you manage as a dentist, at what age, what to be done, all these things are very important. then to whom do you refer? It's always cleft lip and palate is always a multidisciplinary approach. Then comes the surgical part of it. Surgical part of it, unilateral cleft, how do you manage it? Bilateral cleft, how do you manage it? What is pharyngoplasty and BPI? So how do you do it? These are all the important things. So this is an important topic. Hope it was useful and something informative was there present for you people. If you people have any doubts, kindly mail me, or this is my number. You can ask me anytime. I will be ready to explain you. Thank you. Thank you all.